Yeah, it's actually kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. When you start pulling gears, give it a chance to build some boost. But once it does, it actually does pull pretty briskly. It's a fun little car. Mercedes Benz managed to scrap about 220 pounds of weight off this chassis by using more use of aluminum and high-grade steels. Most of the vehicle's performance is really more geared to relaxation, comfort. Life's too short to drive boring cars. And here we have a 4th generation C300 coupe called the W205. And so today we're going to talk about some of the nuances, show you some of the quirks and weird idiosyncrasies, and actually at the very, very end, we'll give you the PETA score. That's right, it's the pain in the arse score. 0 to 10 for reliability, fun factor, and value for the money. Let's get into it now. In recent years, Mercedes-Benz and many other car manufacturers have changed and evolved in the way that they operate and the types of products that they release into the market. For example, what we have here is a C300 in the W205. And unfortunately, before that, we actually had a V6 engine as a C300. So what's now happening is some of the base engines are now toggling down to the utilization of 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engines. In this case, this particular engine makes about 241 horsepower, and in many other cases, BMW has a similar engine, as does Audi. Now, the C300 here is what you'd consider really the starting point for the majority of the mainline Benzes. Sure, they have subcompact vehicles called the CLA and the GLA, but those actually utilize primarily a front-wheel drive setup, and in the 4MATIC version of the CLA, for example, you're actually getting all-wheel drive, but again, primarily with the front wheels driving. But here in the C-Class, you're actually getting primarily a rear-wheel drive setup, and in the 4MATIC, all 4 wheels potentially clawing at the pavement. So it's a great setup. Of course, if you go up to the E-Class of Benzes, you'll find the ride quality even that much better in terms of comfort, compliance, and overall quality of ride with less harshness involved. Let's start with one of the quirks that I found with the Benz. Right here, you'll notice AMG. Now, AMG and Benz, of course, AMG is their special division. Performance vehicles, typically more hand-built, as well as higher levels of output. Now, unfortunately, Mercedes is no different than BMW, is no different than Audi. They're now loosely using the terms AMG to imply a performance, but in actuality, they're just splattering that tag on there. No different than BMW using the M badging as well as the RS badging in the Audi. And the headlights on these, this is another very, very interesting quirk that I find. Personally, I would say a glassmaker would be proud to create this level of complexity buried behind the lens of this C300. And another quirk is all this star. It almost looks like space, the cosmos, if you will. And I get all excited like JoJo when I see light shine on this and it illuminates back. Love this grille style. Now, of course, if you've got the sedan, it actually has a different style altogether. As well, not to be confused with what we're seeing from the more premium version of the Benzes, in particular the S-Class, where you've got the horizontal slats and it's more prominent. And then you have the back end of the car. I find it a little quirky. You'll notice the rear haunches are a little too roundy for my look, but honestly, I love this way this flips up. I really do believe this needs the little additional lip, and you'll find those typically on the AMG cars. Here's the 4MATIC, means that this car is all-wheel drive, and it's a C300, as I mentioned already. Older generations would imply it's a V6. Now this is a turbo 4-cylinder engine. We have these great little vents on the corners here to add a little extra flair. And if you look at these beautiful exhaust tips down here, they're very intriguing, although they're cheesy and cheap. If you want to talk about quirks, most vehicles nowadays don't even have anything coming out of here. It's more just for looks and cosmetics. So with that 242 horsepower, you also get a smashing 273 pound-feet of twist coming out of that little drivetrain. That 4-cylinder 2-liter piece of lump there. We've got a beautiful intercooler. We've got a turbocharger packed under there. It's a great little package, and honestly far more efficient than the outgoing V6. But here's another quirky piece that you can't see. It's hidden under the skin. Did you realize in this generation of the W205, Mercedes-Benz managed to scrap about 220 pounds of weight off this chassis by using more use of aluminum and high-grade steels that were much lighter, which ultimately improves overall performance as well as fuel economy. Beautiful touch, Mercedes. And so another fun and fresh little quirky feature is the seatbelt holder. Watch as I close the door, I get into the car. Now it reaches, extends out, so I can go and grab this and buckle that bad boy in. Now we're ready for the drive. So here you have your seat controls on your door panel here on both sides. Of course, you can do 3 presets for 3 different drivers possibly. You've got a headrest adjustment, center section, as well as a bottom bolster adjustments. You can do a lot of adjustability within those seats. You've also got heated seats here, 1, 2, 3 sections on that, and as well locking and unlock. Down here you've got your window controls and your mirrors. And here this is very important because remember, we couldn't do this from the outside very well, so we give this a pull. So on the left-hand side of the steering stalk here, you have 3 major controls. Now this isn't so quirky. You have a cruise control adjustments right there. You've got your signals right there, left and right, and as well as your windshield wiper controls you'll notice on there. Where it gets quirky is this little knobby. And I didn't even realize this until well into ownership of one of these cars myself, is that we're talking about heated steering wheel. You can't even see this when the steering wheel is straight on. You can't even see that this thing is even here. But you turn that, now you'll notice it's illuminated. That now is heating the steering wheel, making it warm to the touch when weather's really, really cold. You toggle it again and it goes away. Okay, down here you have basically your park brake, electric. Here you have your light controls, pretty standard fare, and as well your dimmer for that right here. You do notice you have your park assist or your alarms right here. You can disable that if it's beeping and you don't love the sound of that. You can also turn off your cameras right there or toggle them accordingly. And over here we have a really quirky assembly. This here is actually the stick shift. 3 on the tree, as they used to say, right? Well, it's not 3-speed anymore. This is actually a 9-speed automatic transmission here that you can control. This is to throw it in park. You hit this button and it parks the vehicle, or you can toggle this up for reverse or down into drive. Now this gets a little dangerous. Sometimes if you're not used to this, you might accidentally think that this here is actually your windshield wipers and you could actually throw it in the opposite gear if you're driving along. Potentially a dangerous situation and very much unlike many vehicles today. And as I said, you know, most vehicles no longer have them up here. Most vehicles actually have your gear shift assembly down on the console here. BMWs, Audis, Jaguars, pretty much almost every brand nowadays has the controller down here in some way down on the console, but not this Mercedes. It's up here, so buyer beware. You also have paddle shifters here, which allow you to stroke up and down through the gears, all 9 speeds of them, and it makes it for a very spirited drive. And this is a quirky little assembly here. We have a few different miscellaneous controls, stereo controls, power it off. We also have the auto vehicle shut off here. You can disable it. And of course, dynamic mode, you can make adjustments. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They have essentially this little dial controller similar to BMW's iDrive system, but they also have this additional mouse style pad here. You can actually hand write on there, or you can move it like a mouse here. And of course you have got some basic controls here. We can toggle this, toggle that, and toggle the other. So this is kind of an interesting assembly, not something you really want to rest your hand on because it will activate certain features. Here we have a nice soft touch there, and we have a CD player. It's old school, right? Navigation, media, you have all the goodies. And of course here, all your heating controls, AC and the like. You have dual climate control, very, very nice. The CLA does not. This is a nice element. Nice brushed aluminum touches. This is also a nice, very quirky little look. You can move this around with great flexibility. You can close the vents by turning them counterclockwise. You can reopen them this way, and you can aim them in a multitude of different directions. Very slick. Then you have the touchscreen. Beautiful graphics, but I will say it doesn't have touchscreen capability, which is a little bit of a downer. However, it does have the 360 camera. So we back out, and now as you can see, we're into the vehicle settings, and we can set dynamic select. We can do all kinds of greatness here, and you definitely love it. Fuel consumption, you can pull up the owner's manual, time, as well as general vehicle settings. So you can go into there, and it gives you some extras in there. So we go back. And even more importantly is the dynamic settings. Dynamic select, you can go engine data, click into that, and you can actually watch all the stats going on right here in your center screen. It's a beautiful touch, especially for your passenger who might be willing to watch what's going on. You can also back out of that. And then you can go individual vehicle data. And then of course you see all the other activities, but you have to have the vehicle running for that. Some very, very interesting, quirky little factors. And what kind of vehicle would this be if it didn't have a navigation? Of course, there you have it, navigation. Very easy to program, very user-friendly, and quite up to date. All right, so out on the road, This car just feels wonderful. It's a great piece. It's relatively quiet. And when I said noisy, most of the noise is generally from the outside of the vehicle. It's the idling engine that sounds a little bit diesely, but other than that, the vehicle doesn't sound all that noisy. There's the odd wind noise or whistle that you might get when you're cruising along, but usually only at higher speeds. Most of the vehicle's performance is really more geared to relaxation, comfort, a lot less than sport. Because even when I start pulling gears, the vehicle moves plenty quick. It's actually very, very spunky. When you get on it, it actually feels very spirited. So what I would say about the transmission is it feels a little bit dull. Even when you switch the controls to dynamic mode and you bump up the speed and the overall output to its kill setting, it's still a little bit muted. It's still a little soft. You don't get that strong urgency and slamming upon gear shifts. It's a 9-speed auto. It's really more meant for automatic mode. Although you can shift it via paddles, it is more geared for comfort and economy than it is for performance. But there's just enough performance to light your fire. If in fact you want the next level of performance, you may have to step up to the 43 series of the C-Class. It gets you a little more jam with the turbo 6-cylinder engine, or of course the C63S at 505 horsepower. That's really the way you go if you want performance. However, you don't get all-wheel drive in the C63, but you do here, and that just makes this vehicle very sure-footed. It also drives very, very nicely in poor weather conditions, snow and ice. Does quite a good job with all-weather tires on it. It does an amazing job. Now, as we merge onto a freeway, and I just kind of lay into the throttle, there's a little bit of a turbo lag, and there's a point where you put your foot into it, there's a wait, and then it finally downshifts, the lag goes away, and then it starts to pull. It's certainly not the quickest accelerating as far as taking up off a get-go. There's enough turbo lag to sort of hold you back, but once you're onto the boost, it actually does a great job of moving the vehicle around very, very briskly. Again, I find the handling very tight. The switching back and forth is nice. It's very responsive, although there is a little bit of lean. So at higher speeds, when you start pulling left to right, you'll find the vehicle tends to want to lean a little bit. It doesn't have that crispness, it doesn't have that sharpness in the corners that you would expect from, say, the C63S. Try an M3 BMW, that'll as well take it to another level. But again, as I say, the handling, the acceleration is all geared more towards the comfort side of things. It does a great job of keeping you engaged and entertained, but if you really want that next level of performance, you're gonna have to look up to the next series within the C-Class. All right, so let's do a one quick pull, first, second, third gear. Here we go. Whoa. Yeah, it's actually kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. When you start pulling gears, give it a chance to build some boost. But once it does, it actually does pull pretty briskly. It's a fun little car. And as I say, you know, the shifting between gears isn't all that aggressive. But once you're on boost, the car has a strong urgency to get moving. So it's all a person ever needs for day-to-day driving. And let's face it, I mean, with the fuzz out there today, it's all about keeping everybody down to 30-kilometer-an-hour speed zones everywhere. So it begs the question whether you need a car with 800 horsepower. Let's talk about the PETA score now. There's 3 key elements. Let's talk about the first one, and value. Well, first of all, these cars are not excessively priced. I mean, we're in the range of that $45,000, $50,000 Canadian. With that, you get all-wheel drive, you get all of the amenities you could possibly ask for in a Benz: sunroof, heated seats, cooled seats, power, everything. And because it's relatively easy on fuel, being that it's a turbo 4-cylinder engine, if you drive it easily, it will provide you reasonable fuel economy. So it's versatile with a trunk, 4 seats, and all-wheel drive. Makes it very usable for a small family, the young executive, or anybody else that just wants to make a statement, show that they have a beautiful Mercedes, but does it in class and style, as well as doesn't miss the beat in terms of the value component. Therefore, out of 10, I give this vehicle a 7.5 out of 10 for its overall value proposition. And then on the PETA score, we have to talk about performance, or fun factor, if you will. So you get behind the wheel, you start pulling gears, and you start enjoying it in a sprightly fashion. Is it a fun vehicle to actually own? Well, yes, relatively, I would say. It depends on your point of reference. My point of reference says it's moderate. It's better than a CLA. It's a better ride quality, so you're going to find it handles the bumps a little better. It's not so harsh. So from a ride quality perspective, it's a lot of fun. It handles very, very well with the all-wheel drive. It tends to always stick tightly to the corners, and it stays very planted, very neutral, and it's a fun car to drive in the corners, in the switchbacks, through long sweepers. It's a fun little car to rip around it. Performance, not amazing. 241 horsepower, 270 some odd pound-feet of torque means you're going to crack a 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds. While it's brisk, it's not going to break any earth-shattering records. And as an overall package, with handling, braking, and acceleration, I ranked this vehicle at about a 6.5 out of 10 on the PETA score for fun factor. Now on the PETA score, let's talk about reliability. That's the ultimate factor here. Reliability is what I'd consider moderate and actually above average for a luxury vehicle like a Mercedes Benz. And where are the problems? Well, there's some electric issues from time to time. I know there's been lots of comments. I've talked to customers as well as friends in the business. Some of the electrics, sometimes your display on your infotainment system can go black. Gauges, there's been issues with lighting controls and other different electrics seem to be an issue from time to time with these vehicles. There's another issue sometimes with body integrity with some of these vehicles. I personally seen this with this vehicle. We hit a set of road train tracks with this vehicle and we heard a bang, and it wasn't even that hard of a track, and all of a sudden the rocker panel actually popped loose. We had to take the vehicle into the dealership to get it reset because it had popped loose. Possibly some rivets underneath had popped out. And so body panels I find are a little fragile. So it's the body integrity. Some of the electrics seem to be the issue. The drivetrain as well seems to be a little noisy. The engine almost diesels a little bit. And for a 4-cylinder engine, not uncommon. A lot of 4-cylinder engines tend to do that. However, it definitely a noisier drive, noisier front end. You get some road noise, a little bit of moderate wind noise when you're driving, but again, engine noise, more specifically at idle. As a result, with what I know from previous generation cars, and as well as what we know today for models like the W205 here, my overall reliability rating for this C300, the 205 version like this, goes to a 6.5 out of 10, giving an overall PETA score of 20 even out of 30, giving it just a pass and absolutely a vehicle worth owning. I might add that it's actually significantly better than the CLA version of the Benz class, and personally I'd own this before any Audi, as well as I definitely own this before I'd own a 430 BMW with their 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine. Even though the BMW is up to a 255 horsepower output, this definitely feels like an upscale car, at least on the interior. And with all of that said, right there, check that video, you're gonna love it. It's all about the 10 things you don't want to tell the car salesman if you're trying to get the best deal. Hope to see you guys real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.